Hello, welcome to another episode of Inspector Lander. My name is Jim Hamilton, co-founder of The Gig, aka Inspector Lander, and we're here today for another landing page audit. So just to orient you as to what you're looking at, on the left-hand side of my screen, I have the landing page we're going to be auditing. On the right-hand side, I have my landing page checklist. So this is the exact same process I go through anytime I'm auditing a landing page for a client. I'll conduct a written analysis, and then I'll record a video just like this one walking through my feedback. And if you work with clients, I highly recommend you do the same. I'm going to put a copy of this landing page checklist filled out for this particular lander in the description of the YouTube video. So if you want to add it to your drive so you can make a copy and use it for yourself, feel free. All right, so we'll start over here at the top. So the brand that we're looking at today is a guy, it's a personal brand. His name is Brendan Kane. The product is called Hook Point, and it is a book. This is the URL here. The objective here for the lander is sales. And now before we dive a little bit deeper, I'm gonna talk about this, a couple of editor's notes here. So the first thing is the landing pages we cover here in Inspector Lander are always receiving paid traffic, right? Because paid and organic are just two totally different things, and really I'm not interested in looking at a landing page that isn't receiving paid traffic. Secondly, auditing a lander like this without knowing the stats, right? Like I don't work for Brendan Kane, I don't know how this lander's doing, but auditing a landing page in this way without the stats, it means that the conclusions you can draw are limited, right? Because you don't know actually how it's doing, and you might think it sucks, but it's really, doing really well. But the point of the exercise is to teach yourself how to think strategically, right? And so you don't need to know how the page is performing to be able to look at this and identify missed opportunities or areas of weakness or ways that you would improve it, right? And how to kind of articulate that, right? So the goal is to just, get better at analyzing pages like this and providing, meaningful feedback to clients to help them improve their performance. Oftentimes simple kind of ugly pages or pages that you think like aren't that great can often outperform really nicely designed pages, right? So important to note. And then we'll give each section a score. So above the fold, below the fold, and the offer. Those are the three sections. We'll give each section a score from 0 to 10, but no 7s allowed, right? So it's got to be either a 6 or an 8. All right. So let's dive in. So we're going to start with above the fold. We're going to look at the header section here. So we have kind of the brand name, we have these sort of anchored links here. So it makes it look like it's kind of like a full website, but it just sort of drops you down. Like if you click here, it just sort of drops you down further onto the page, which is a sort of common way to set up landing pages like this. So we'll read the headline. So you have 3 seconds. How will you stand out? Get access to insider strategies that are putting the 1% at the top and keeping them there. So when we analyze headlines and header sections more specifically, which I typically categorize as the pre-head, the headline, and the subhead, what I'll look at is it unique, is it useful, is it urgent, and is it ultra specific, right? Those are also known as the 4 U's. And on top of that, but something that's kind of a function of that is, does it clearly communicate the promise of the offer, right? Like the outcome that you're going to get. So if we look at this header section in terms of uniqueness, we get insider strategies that are putting the 1% at the top. That definitely evokes some uniqueness, but otherwise it's not super unique, right? When we look at usefulness, I think it's highly, highly useful, right? So the idea is you're going to learn how to create compelling hooks that grab attention, right? So if you are someone who works in advertising, if you're an organic content creator, this is highly, highly applicable, highly useful, right? And urgency, what's awesome here is this idea of like, you only have 3 seconds, right? And so even though that has nothing to do with the urgency of this offer, it creates a lot of implicit urgency for you to act on it, right? So it's really, really nicely done. And it's this really cool feature that's kind of built into the way they position this offer. In terms of specificity, I would say it's very specific, right? Like, it's about creating hooks. It's not about creating long form videos. It's not about recording webinars. It's not about, anything other than creating hooks, right? The book is called Hook Point. The promise itself, I would argue, is a bit vague. So like it says, how will you stand out? That's pretty non-specific. Putting the 1% at the top and keeping them there, also pretty non-specific. So, there are a lot of other things, a lot of other points that they could have added into the promise here. The sales video goes through a laundry list of different results and different outcomes. So I personally probably would have chosen to try to spotlight some of that because, you know, the 1% at the top is a little overdone as well. Like you see a lot of different offers, right? Learn how the top 1% advertisers run, you know, paid traffic. Learn how the top 1% sales reps make 40K a month, whatever it is, right? Like there's that top 1% angle is kind of a little bit overplayed, and I think it, you know, probably doesn't resonate quite as much with a broad kind of swath of the market as most people think. But anyway, next we always look at page speed, right? Because page speed is critical when you're looking at the, you know, conversion rate of a landing page when you're auditing it, and really what you want to see is 2 seconds or less, right? Because every second, every half second that it takes for the page to load, which is sort of the gap between when someone clicks on the ad and when they actually hit the page, there is a drop off, right? And when you go beyond 2 seconds, that drop off starts to get steeper, right? So you're essentially paying for traffic that you're not actually getting because you're paying for that click, you're paying for that person to see the ad, click on the ad, but then you're not actually getting them to the page because it's taking too long to load, right? So we use a tool called Pingdom to look at page speed here. And you can see I've run it through here and it's 2.13 seconds. So it's a tiny bit over the 2 second mark, but really, you know, I don't think that matters. And yeah, so that's great to see. That's definitely what we look for. Next, we analyze the image or video if there is one above the fold. And in this case, of course, there is one. There's a nice video here. And so I'm just going to let the video play and kind of mute the music here. Yeah, there's no speed, so I can't speed it up for you, but it's a really compelling video, as you can see. It's got some direct to camera with a kind of an interesting, you know, landscape background. It's got lots of proof and kind of credibility signals where he's sort of talking on stage. He's talking to big groups of people who are listening intently. There's lots of cuts, there's animations, there's copy that slides in and out, and you know, the structure of the video, I mean, it really hits all the notes, right? So I kind of just, you know, as I was watching, noted down the sections that it hits here. So it kind of, you know, calls out the problem, it agitates the, you know, the consequence of the problem, introduces a solution, which is the book, you know, hits on some future pacing, right? Imagine this, imagine that, talks about the benefits, hits on the proof, right? So things that he has done, results that he's achieved for himself, results that he's achieved for clients, talks about credibility, some of the people that he's worked with, talks about overcoming objections, even if you don't run paid ads, even if you have no followers, even if no one's ever heard of you, right? So it's a really, really effective sales video, and I think really gets the job done quite nicely. Next, we'll look at the mobile views. This is another one that's really important. You know, anywhere from 60 to 80% of all traffic is mobile, right? So it's critical to analyze landing pages from the mobile view, and you can do that just by going into your settings and click on Developer Tools, which I just did there. So let's take a look at how this is here. So, you know, the headline formats kind of nicely. Obviously, those header menu items disappear, which, you know, makes sense because they're not really necessary. And then as we scroll, we can see that like the line breaks are nice, right? So even on mobile, there's the paragraphs aren't too long. Nothing is particularly blocky. You see how there's a nice skim track as well, right? So that this is bolded, this is bolded, this is bolded. And so when you analyze a page like this, you always want to look at the skim track as well. So meaning if someone just skims the page and all they look at are the headlines, so you have 3 seconds, a personal note from Brendan Kane, marketing advisors, celebrities, pro athletes, and major brands. And then sort of reiterates this, you know, and then so you just basically you look at all of just the pieces of copy that are emphasized either with size through a subhead, you know, or a headline, or through bolding or italics or whatever. You analyze that and you see if they can grasp the fundamental sales argument that you're making just by reading that and not reading the whole kind of all this other copy that's not highlighted or bolded or whatever. And in this case, it's definitely there, right? So we can see that it looks nice. The videos, you know, are sort of laid out nicely. This is a little blocky here for sure, but otherwise, you know, this looks really nice. These testimonials are nice. We got headshots. So yeah, ultimately, I think it's formatted really nicely for mobile. All right, go back up to the top here, and then so the last piece of that sort of above the fold section that we typically see is the CTA. So what we always look for here is like, first of all, is it visible, right? Because on a lot of landing pages, you you hit the lander and the button's not even visible, right? And, you know, anywhere from another 60 to 80% of people will not scroll down on the bottom of a page, right? They'll make a decision whether to kind of, you know, act or not just based on what's above the fold, right? So you always, if possible, want to try to include everything that someone needs to make a decision on whether to act or not above the fold. Aside from that, we want to look at, is the button big, right? Like, is it inviting, is it clicking, or is it like really small and kind of easy to miss? So in this case, I'd say it's a decent size. Like, I'd probably make it bigger. I'd certainly make the font bigger, and there's room to make the font bigger, I would say, in this button here. Is it an eye-catching color? I would say yes. Like, the blue contrasts pretty well with the rest of the page. And that's always what you want to look for as well. Like, you know, common mistake that people make with landing pages is they color their buttons the same, you know, with one of their brand colors, essentially, right? So, you know, like in this case, you might have used red, right? And so red's obviously an accent color here. But if you were using red for all of these different subheads and then also the button, it would start to kind of bleed together, and the button itself wouldn't pop out as much, nor would the copy that you're trying to accent with a different color as well. So the blue is nice. I personally would have chosen a brighter shade of blue. I think this one's a little dull. It's a little bit darker than I would have chosen. But again, in terms of like the hierarchy of influence on conversion rate, that's unlikely to make a big difference. So I think that's worth noting. And then the last thing I always like to check is like, does the link work? Because you know, it would shock you how often there are broken links, broken buttons, whatever. So here we see that the link works, so they get top marks for that. So ultimately, when we look at kind of how to score this, I would give this above the fold section a 9 out of 10. Honestly, I think it's pretty kick-ass. I think the video really drives it home, but you know, because it's a compelling offer, and because you really get, you get everything, right? And of course, the book is about hooks, and you know, the hook here, you have 3 seconds, how you stand out. Like, that's really short, really punchy, and I think quite effective. So I quite like that. So again, I give the above the fold section 9 out of 10 here. Moving below the fold. Now, typically, what we see immediately below the fold is credibility in the form of media features, certifications, like other kind of credibility badges. And actually, in this case, it's above the fold, which is interesting. So it's great, like bonus points if you can get that up above the fold, because obviously that's just going to help create even more trust and make someone even more confident in taking action. But the thing is, they're kind of downplayed visually, right? Like if you look at these, they're grayed out and they're kind of just against this white background. They're quite small, so like they really don't stick out as much as they could, you know? And these are like, look at some of these: Paramount, Taylor Swift, MTV, Sony Pictures, Vice, CMT, I don't know who that is, Yahoo, IKEA, Rihanna, Viacom, NHL. Like, these are huge brands, huge name recognition, right? So, you know, what I probably would have done is like put this on its own row of content, like in terms of the page builder, and you know, I mean, made it bigger, but then also changed the background color so it doesn't like blend in quite so much, because it's very easy to just kind of skim over this and not realize like just how high profile these are. And then looking at kind of the rest of the page in terms of its credibility, like he calls out again, like he talks about 15 years he's been working, and you know, all these high level clients that he's been working with. And then if we look in his bio, you know, he talks about working with Fortune 500 corporations. He talks about working on films. He talks about, you know, doing this and that. So he's like really got a ton of credibility. You know, full points here. One other thing I like that, you know, applies more to someone like me and well, likely the audience he's targeting with this offer, is that, you know, in the video, itself, he talks about both paid advertising results, but also organic results, right? And I think that's one way to really not only broaden the potential kind of, you know, target for this offer, but also to appeal to credibility, because, you know, if you are an organic content creator and someone who is an advertising expert is telling you how to create hooks, well, then maybe you get worried that like, oh, well, you know, this guy doesn't do organic content, so maybe it doesn't apply, right? Or maybe I shouldn't trust him, and vice versa. Where, you know, if you're a paid ads guy or girl, and you know he's only talking about organic content, you're like, yeah, well, ads are a different beast, so I'm gonna look for something else, right? So really nice job establishing credibility on this page. Next, we're gonna look at the product info, and so when it comes to information products, what you are looking for is bullets, right? So the bullets are designed to tease the reveals that come inside the product, right? And the best practice, the most effective way to do that is to use page numbers or timestamps or chapters, in this case, as you can see, to really ramp up that intrigue. Because one thing that can lead to frustration is like, if there's a bullet here and, you know, it just said, how I use hook points to land clients like Taylor Swift, MTV, and Vice Magazine, and you're like, wow, I really want to know what that is. but you buy the book and you have no idea where to look to get that payoff, that can be frustrating, right? So here, you're getting, that like as soon as you get the book, you flip to page 10, you're going to get the answer, right? And that really creates an irresistible urge for a lot of people to pull the trigger on an offer like this. So, and especially with a low priced info product, like a book, like a course, like a video, one bullet is really all it takes to convince someone to pull the trigger. Like one really well-written bullet that creates a lot of curiosity and intrigue is it. And so, looking over all of these, you can see every single bullet starts with like chapter 1, page 10, chapter 2, page 45. And, if you're dealing with something that's not that long, you can even get into like paragraphs and line numbers and just get like super micro with it, right? But the point is to really tell someone exactly where they can go to get that payoff. And this is executed really, really well on this page. The bullets themselves have lots of proof. They name drop. They weave in lots of other conversion elements into the copy. You have private vault of an FBI agent, right? They're super well written. So yeah, top marks there. Next, we look at social proof. So looking up here, he mentions there's definitely testimonials that appear in this video here. So these are testimonials here. It would have been nice to have some captions here, but anyway, I think that's probably not a big deal. Further down is kind of the main testimonial section here, what people are saying about Hook Point. And so, we can see that, we got sort of a nice mix of avatars. We've got sort of a couple, we've got two guys, we've got a woman here as well. And this one's kind of less production value, right, versus some of these. But overall, they're very high quality, and not only do they represent the avatar, but they overcome objections nicely. Like this one kind of talks about it's, he wishes it's what he had when he started his YouTube channel, and again, just like speaks to some of the concerns that other people might have before buying the book, and then talks about kind of how it overcame that and the results that he achieved, right? So it really checks that box in terms of demonstrating before and after, right? And that's what really makes a good testimonial, right? You don't just want someone to, write you a thing and say, hey, this was amazing, I really enjoyed it, right? Because that doesn't mean anything. It's pointless, that's not going to be persuasive. Then if we scroll further down, there are a bunch of written testimonials here. And this is great too, because some people are happy to watch videos, but honestly, I will very rarely watch video testimonials like this. Like I much prefer written testimonials like this, and even though like they can be faked theoretically, and there are lots of like companies that do that, I prefer a written testimonial because that's just my consumption preference, right? And so he's got a nice mix of them here. And again, best practice for a written testimonial is to have a headshot, is to have a full name, not just like a first name and a last initial, and if you can, like their title, their company, etc. And so these are super high profile people, and arguably he could have called more attention to these, like their titles and their companies, because like Goalcast is a massive company. This guy's the CEO. Golden Hippo is a massive like $100 million a year direct response company with many brands under its within its portfolio. So that's huge. Like actor in The Purge and the star of Doom Patrol. These are huge. Look at his co-founder of Mind Valley. Like these are massive testimonials. So again, not only are they very persuasive in terms of proof, they also add a ton of credibility, right? That's kind of the two-pronged benefit of having really high-profile testimonials like this. Lastly, we'll look at frequently asked questions. So with this one here, the FAQ is present, and so again, in a lot of cases, like kind of the thing I always say is that the FAQ is like the redheaded stepchild of copywriters and marketers, in that it's often ignored and left to the last, and even if it is done, it's just not done well. And so I would kind of chalk that up here. What happens after I purchase? Is there a money back guarantee? What if I need help? What if I don't receive my order? Like super basic. Nothing is product specific about this, right? And even these answers aren't that kind of beefy. And so, this is an opportunity to add some additional persuasion and additional proof and additional urgency and motivation to buy. And, so that was definitely missed here. And this is one area where I would, recommend making some changes. So, I would beef this up with questions like, does this work on any platform, right? Does this work even if I have no followers? Because that's going to be a major concern for people who are interested in the book, right? It's like, well, do you need to have 1 million followers for this to work? Does this work for organic or paid ads? And obviously the answer is going to be both, but so like people are going to be thinking those questions, right? And so if they have those questions on their mind, especially with these accordion style FAQs, it's nice because they don't necessarily know, they can't see what the answer is, but they're probably going to click on that, right? If they're thinking that question, if I'm wondering, hey, does this work for organic and paid ads, and I see that as an FAQ, I'm clicking on it, for sure. So again, it's just another kind of at bat to convert someone ultimately. So tallying all that up, I give this below the fold an 8 out of 10. Overall, I think it's quite strong, right? Like the way that it's laid out, I mean, the credibility is obviously just over the top. I mean, this guy's just, an extremely credible source, someone who appears to be very, very trustworthy and has achieved a lot of results. There's a lot of intriguing stuff here. Like there's bullets that I want to know, right? Like there's I want to buy this book because it's super intriguing, right? It's got a lot of interesting stuff teased within. So 8 out of 10 on that. And then the last thing is the offer itself. And so when I look at an offer and kind of a grand slam offer, as Alex Hormozy likes to call it, I look at desired outcome, the product name, pricing, value, bonuses, guarantee, and then urgency and scarcity. And so if we look at the desired outcome here, it's clear that you're going to learn how to create hook points, right? That's what he talks about in the video. That's what he talks about on the page. That's what he talks about in his ads. You're creating these hook points. You're learning how to write hooks or create hooks, video hooks, right? That are really compelling, right? So I think the outcome there is pretty clear. The product name I love, like hook point as a name, right? Like it's super punchy. It's super short. Like it's 2 syllables, right? Hook point. That's like very, very sticky, very memorable, right? Easy to remember. And it tells you exactly what it's going to be. And it, like, if you were to just see an image of the cover of the book, you would know what it was about and that you would be interested in it, right? So really, really nice job with the product name. The pricing, it's $4.99. So, that's super, super low ticket. And obviously the idea is just to get a really high volume of low ticket buyers with this here. And, as opposed to charging $97, it's within reach of literally anyone. What I found interesting is that there's no order bump on the checkout page. That's curious, because the other thing that ties in here, which is kind of something that I wrote in this value section here, is that you're only getting the audiobook and the ebook, right? You can see this here. So you're only getting the audiobook and the ebook. You're not getting the physical copy. And a lot of people, especially book buyers, there's a lot of people who pride themselves on books. They love the tangible value of like having a book. And, being an avid book buyer is as much about like your identity and showing off to friends, right? Like when people come over, you want them to like admire your bookshelf and all the cool books that you have on there. So, this obviously isn't appealing to that. However, the flip side is like shipping is a huge pain in the ass, especially on these types of offers where, you may be advertising internationally. And so therefore shipping internationally, like that can become a huge pain in the ass. People are waiting 30 days to get their book. And you are potentially losing money, or you have to charge a higher price point on the shipping. So it's like $10 or $15 to ship internationally when, it's just kind of, it's not a great experience for either party, right? For you as the advertiser or the marketer, or for the buyer. And the other thing is, you always want to give someone a way, especially with information, to get that instant gratification, right? They want like instant payoff. You want them to be able to instantly start consuming what it is that you're selling, so that they can start to, get that payoff. Just so, primarily so they're not going to refund, but then also so that they can start to get the result and want to ascend, right? Because with any front end offer like this that's being advertised, if the price point's $4.99, I promise you that's not all they're offering, right? There's obviously a high ticket program that's somewhere in the funnel behind this, right? And so maybe there's like a course upsell, and then on the thank you page there's an offer to book a sales call, right? To learn about to apply for the high ticket program, that kind of stuff, right? So the ebook and the audiobook, it kind of solves that, right? Where it's like, you're not going to get the hardcover book, and we're not going to have to deal with the hassles and the headaches of shipping this out to you. However, you're going to get the ebook and the audiobook both, so you're going to get the instant gratification, and it's as cheap as possible for both parties. So I'm sure this was a conscious decision, right? But it's important to kind of understand those trade-offs here when you're looking at an offer like this. In terms of the guarantee, it's not really kind of called out very much. But it's a pretty standard like 30-day money back guarantee. So nothing special, but something that you gotta have if you're running paid ads. In terms of urgency, like I hit on before, I think the whole like 3 second, like you only have 3 seconds to stand out. It doesn't have to do with the offer itself, but it is, right? It's like built in, it's structural, it's implicit, And so it's a really, really nice kind of like amplifier or conversion booster in that sense, where like because your product solves a problem that has urgency built into it, your offer is kind of inherently has urgency built into it, even though it's a book that's available and there's not even a timer on the page or any kind of mention of like, oh hey, we can't promise how long this offer is going to be up, or any of those other kind of cliched direct response lines, right? So really, really like that. And in terms of scarcity, there's no scarcity. Again, it's an evergreen offer. It's a digital book, right? So they're not really kind of hitting on that. So yeah, overall, I gave the offer a score of 8 out of 10. Again, I think like one thing that could have been done is they could have made the physical copy of the book an order bump, right? So let's say it's $4.99 for the ebook and the audiobook, and if you want to add the physical book to your order, it's another $29, right? And so there, at least you're guaranteed to like cover your costs on the shipping and on the book itself, the printing. And then that way the people who do want books can get them, and then your AOV is higher, and so that helps with advertising and stuff. So I mean that's probably something I would recommend implementing here. Again, without knowing, without having any other additional context, whether maybe they've tested that in the past or whatever it is. But yeah, I think that's one thing that would have made this offer a little bit more appealing. Not to mention some additional bonuses, like there really aren't. And actually I didn't mention that in my audit here, but there really aren't any bonuses, which is another area that would have strengthened the offer. No bonuses present. So ultimately, a really, really strong page. One I would highly recommend adding to your swipe file, especially if you are doing any work with book funnels. And we've covered a couple of those in the past on Inspector Lander as well. And it's a very common front end offer, so it's really good to have a swipe file to refer back to in terms of really good, really well executed front end landers for book offers. So again, add this to your swipe file, and that's it. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to learn more about marketing strategy, you can sign up for our free daily newsletter at thegig.io/subscribe. I'll also put a link down in the description. And until next time, peace.